How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, we're treating today as an open line Friday because I'm taking my son to the Masters tomorrow. Nope, didn't get any invites to Berkman's place, but that's okay. We're going to have a great time at the Masters. He's recovered. My buddy T-Mac wanted to go if Gunnar wasn't recovered from his wisdom teeth extraction, but Gunnar said that he didn't care how much he hurt. He was going, but he's not hurting. He's recovering quickly. So one day, hopefully, I will have lots and lots of passes and we'll be able to take lots and lots of people, but that's okay. I'm going to take my son tomorrow. We're going to spend a lot of money at the gift shop, Pro Shop merch stand and eat pimento cheese and egg salad and barbecue and have a great time. The weather is going to be gorgeous. And yes, of course, I have the quad screen split on from the Masters. It's incredible. The Masters, it's 1 week a year and their technology is always flawless. Such a great operation. Okay, we gotta move in. We've got news stories that must be covered and are important. We are watching the Western elite wholesale sell out the West and Israel in particular to Iran and Hezbollah. The French government insists that a peace deal must come and involve Lebanon. The Europeans have released a joint statement saying peace must involve Israel not bombing Lebanon. Why is Israel bombing Lebanon? It's bombing it because Hezbollah has built up in southern Lebanon in violation of treaties negotiated by the Europeans. Hezbollah has built up a massive storehouse of weaponry in Lebanon, south of, I forget the name of the river there. They're not supposed to go south of, but they have. They've weaponized it. And Israel has decided to take it on, and Israel has decided to blow them up. And what is most notable is the Lebanese government is saying, hey, you guys can't decide for us. We weren't part of the deal. We weren't at the table. We don't want your deal. We'll deal with Israel directly. In fact, the Lebanese prime minister came out a short time ago and said they would love to cooperate with Israel. They would love to demilitarize Beirut, and they would love to sit at the table with Israel. The Israeli government has said they will have direct talks with Lebanon, focusing on disarming Hezbollah and establishing peaceful relations between Lebanon and Israel. This has happened in the last 30 minutes. Israel and Lebanon are going to have their own deal. This is remarkable to see this happening. Lebanon, you should know, used to be the gem of the Middle East. It was the jewel. The Paris, Beirut was considered the Paris of the Mediterranean. It was a gorgeous city at the time. And then Iran started funding Hezbollah and its proxies. A civil war broke out, and it's been a third world hellhole ever since. The notable thing here, and the reason I start the show with this, and the reason it's so important, is because what we're watching is the Western elite in the United States and Europe are treating Lebanon, a sovereign independent nation, as if it is a proxy for Iran. Lebanon does not want to be a proxy for Iran. Lebanon does not want Hezbollah in Lebanon. But the Western elite have decided to treat it as a fiefdom of Iran. When the United States structured its deal with Iran, Iran had 10 points, and the first point had nothing to do with Lebanon. And then Iran said that its very first point was about Lebanon. What it said is that the United States must cease all hostilities. The word Lebanon was not used. But the Pakistani prime minister, who, by the way, is wanting an expanded nuclear capability, the Iranians, they all decided it included Lebanon. The United States did not. Israel did not. But Iran and Pakistan did, and the Western elite aligned with them. Back in the, 1980s, there was the movie Gremlins. And, what were the 3 rules? I know that don't get wet, no feeding after midnight. 3 rules for gremlins. No bright light, because that can kill them. No water, because if you give them water when wet, they multiply. And no feeding after midnight. Feeding after midnight was the most important rule, because if you fed them after midnight, they would turn into gremlins, these little creatures, the mogwai. You got that? No bright light, it would kill them. No watering, because they would multiply, and no feeding after midnight, because they would turn into gremlins. That movie, by the way, came out when I was a kid, and I remember when I was a kid, it scared me. It came out, I was in 4th grade, and it was also somewhat of a tragic story, too, set around Christmas time, where one of the girls' fathers had decided to come down a chimney as Santa Claus, and he died in the chimney or some such. My kids watched this movie. They were not nearly as impressed as my wife and me, going back and reliving our childhood. It was a famous movie at the time, and then you go back, you're like, no, this movie actually isn't all that great. And it actually was demented. My point in bringing it up is that the Western elite have decided to treat radical Islam as if they are gremlins. They do not want to feed them after midnight. And they are afraid that if we do not give them what they want, that it will be akin to getting them wet and then feeding them after midnight. The Western elite have essentially decided they must coddle the Islamists in our midst, lest they turn radical. And one of the ways they have decided to do this is to, protect them from the West. One of the ways they have decided to do this is to give them what they want, give them as much as they want, so that we can have peace in our time. They have become the Western elite, the French, the British, the Germans, Western academics, even inside the United States. They have essentially become Neville Chamberlain when it comes to dealing with Islamists. They are scared to death. They now have so many within their midst. And keep in mind, when I say they have so many within their midst, we're still talking, in most cases, less than 10% of the population. The max is Germany. It's about 13%. In Great Britain, it's less than 10%, and yet they constantly coddle them because they are scared to death about what would happen. Part of the issue here, too, is that in Western society, Christian ethics still dominate society, even though we're secular nations. But murder is wrong, stealing is wrong, lying is wrong. Western nations kind of embrace these things. And the problem here is that Iran is dominated by Shiite Muslims who at heart embrace taqiyya, which is religious disassimilation, which majority of Shiite or Sunni Muslims don't support. So you've got 2 branches of Islam. Sunni Muslims are the large sect, Shiite Muslims the minority sect. The Shiites have been over time historically more persecuted. The Iranians are predominantly Shiite, and they have embraced this idea of taqiyya, which in practice means lying to the infidel. Muslims have the Quran and the Hadith, and the Hadith is the traditions of the Prophet. And one of the sayings in the Hadith is that war is deceit. And so commanders can use lies to advance their cause. It's perfectly fine. The Iranian regime outmaneuvered the Obama regime with peace talks, in large part by lying. To this day, for example, Democrats insist Iran was not on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon, even though Iran was clearly building a nuclear weapon. And Iran continued to lie and believed that they could lie. And the Western elite were like, trust but verify. You can't verify when they won't let you in the country to verify everything. Even the IAEA was saying, hey, there are parts of this place we can't go. And the Iranians were like, no, this is all for civilian structure. And the progressives were like, yep, we believe them. Now, the catch here, too, that's very important, is that the Western elite have largely, over time, accepted the fact that Iran should be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Now, President Trump has called this ceasefire and is apparently the only person who is ceasing firing in the Middle East. The UAE yesterday blew up an Iranian oil refinery. Iran says it's going to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but it's now going to toll people. We have left Iran without an air force, without much of a navy, without much of a capacity to make war or industrialize. But we haven't ended their ability to make war. And they're going to be resupplied by the Russians and the Chinese. We've left their military command structure and political leadership in disarray, but they can rebuild those things, particularly now that they've decided to toll ships. Let me put this in perspective for you. So a supertanker sailing through the Strait of Hormuz carries about 2 million barrels of oil. 21 million barrels of oil a day typically go through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has now decided it's going to start tolling or taxing each ship up to $2 per barrel of oil, which amounts to $42 million a day in revenue to Iran, generating in excess of $15 billion a year just from the oil, not even the other ships. There are about 140 ships a day that go through the Straits of Hormuz. This peace deal, if it is left in place the way it is going to fund Iran's nuclear and war ambitions. Now, there are a lot of people out there who wanted this war, and they're trying to praise the president as best they can, hoping that the president will go back in and finish the job. They've come out and said, what are you saying? Iran is wiped out. No, Iran is not wiped out. Its leadership is in place. It still has its uranium. It still has ships. It still has the ability to mine the Persian Gulf. It still has all of these capabilities. And the Western elite who are treating the Iranians like gremlins and the Islamic radicals like gremlins, don't get them wet and don't feed them after midnight. They can't really comprehend that Iran's theocratic leadership fundamentally believes they're put on earth by Allah to wipe out the Jews and bring about the apocalypse so the Mahdi returns. If you can't accept that there are people who really, truly, fundamentally believe in Adam and Eve and fundamentally believe in Noah's Ark and fundamentally believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the grave, you're really going to have a hard time believing that there is an entire country that is premised on bringing about the apocalypse, and yet that is fundamentally what the Iranians believe. And if you're listening to me right now and saying, Erickson, that can't possibly be true, you are one of the rubes and dupes the Iranians are hoping are dominant in the West because they really do believe they want to bring about the apocalypse. It's why the president's still got to do more. Look, Donald Trump made a choice to go into Iran and start this. He didn't have to. And there's a good argument to be made that he should have never started it, but he chose to start it. If you start the fight, you've got to win the fight. And negotiating with Iran is not winning the fight because the Iranians presuppose lying to beat their enemy, and they view us as their enemy. Iran will negotiate, will sound tough, will draw hard lines, and do the best they can to, when they compromise, not actually mean it and lie. We have let go of a tiger without defanging it or declawing it, and it will maul us. The president has done a lot in the last month. Iran is now isolated from its trading partners. It can't use Dubai as a hub for money laundering. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Egypt, they have all turned hostile towards Iran and actually sympathetic towards Israel. That's actually really remarkable. They've been set back militarily and economically, but they're going to have the opportunity to rebuild. They're going to have the opportunity to resume building a bomb and building missiles and rockets and drones. They're going to be supplied by the Russians and the Chinese. So the president can't leave it like this. He can't leave it like this. The peace cannot revert to the status quo ante, that what was before the war started, in addition to Iran now taxing ships leaving the Persian Gulf, driving revenue. It can't operate like that. If it operates like that, we're actually going to be worse off than we were before this campaign started. The president made a choice to go in. He now needs to choose to finish the job. What does that look like? Destabilizing the country enough to provoke civil war, revolution, or a change in regime. That's what it must look like now. It's what the Saudis want. It's what the Emiratis want. And in the meantime, we're watching the Western elite side with Iran and treat Lebanon as a proxy and fiefdom of Iran simply because they are scared to death of Islamic fundamentalists in their midst. That is a problem the Europeans cause for themselves. They need to solve that problem for themselves. We need to solve the problem of a fundamentalist theocratic regime in Iran that wants nuclear weapons to bring about the apocalypse. Have you guys noticed the number of people out there who are upset about the amount of money we have spent to send these astronauts around the moon? By the way, they took a high-resolution photo of the moon lander from the Apollo 11 mission. They flew over it. They were able to, with the zoom lens, to snap a picture of it. All the people who have said that we didn't land on the moon, all the conspiracy theorists out there, they're slowly coming to the realization that they were wrong, and so they have to actually dismiss evidence. I saw somebody yesterday say the reason you never argue with the people who don't believe we landed on the moon or the Earth is flat is because it's not that they ignore the evidence, it's that they presume the evidence doesn't exist. They're in a room with the evidence and decide that there is no room, so why bother wasting time? But it is worth needling them because we have now flown over the site where Apollo 11 landed and could actually pick up a picture of the lander on the moon reflecting in the sun. But there are people who say we shouldn't have. It's a waste of money. Less than 1% of the budget of the federal government, we've been able to orbit the moon. What I would notice is that none of these people are outraged by a high-speed rail system in California that's going to ultimately cost $127 billion more dollars. They've already spent more on this high-speed rail system than we spent to send the Artemis mission into space and back. And they want to spend orders of magnitude more money, and yet nobody's upset about a high-speed rail to nowhere. They're just upset about a moon mission. Interesting. Now, I'm upset when people sell my data online, and you should be too, because it happens to all of us. Why do you get those telemarketer calls? Why do you get the credit card solicitations? Why do you get the scammers calling you on the phone about your extended warranty? It's because the data brokers online sell your information pretty much to anyone, including criminals. That's where Incogni comes in. INCOGNI, Incogni. You go to incogni.com/Eric, and they will wipe out your personal information online on your behalf by sending data brokers demand notices to take down your information. And under the law, the data brokers have to comply with the takedown notices. It is too taxing for you to do. It is Incogni's mission to do it for you. Incogni.com/Eric. They have taken my information off 340 plus sites now. Last week it was 324. It's now over 340. They've been doing it constantly, day in and day out. They not only send the takedown notices, they follow up too to make sure the data is taken down. Incogni.com/Eric. The telemarketer calls have gone down. The junk mail's gone down. The spam has gone down in my email box. Incogni.com/Eric. Save up to 60%. Incogni.com/ERICK. Greetings. We're going to do Open Line Friday today because I am going to be at the Masters with my son tomorrow. 877-973-7425. Greg, going to go to you first today. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, I was just saying to Belinda that the people who brought us World War II want to give us advice on how to handle Iran after waiting way too long to deal with Adolf Hitler. And I'm thinking that if the Saudis want us to finish the job, and the other countries in the Middle East do, we should stick with them, because we had the fellow from NATO talking about how NATO needs to stick together to eventually deal with the Chinese. And at least the people in the Middle East have the money to fund the military buildup that we will need to have to deal with the Chinese, if that's what it comes to.
Yeah, look, I got to tell you, I'm really concerned about the NATO situation. I've long been an advocate for staying in NATO. It makes sense to have this alliance, but when we are at war with not only the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world, but a nation that has committed terrorist acts in multiple NATO ally countries, and we decide to go to war with them, and the NATO allies are like, nope, you can't use our airspace, you can't use your own bases that you have in this country that actually create an economic boon for our country. What's the point? And that's my problem with the NATO alliance right now, is every single member of NATO has recognized Iran as a threat. You know, the Spanish have now closed their Israeli embassy and opened one in Iran. They've recalled their ambassador from Israel and put one in Iran. This tells you where the far-left socialist leadership in Spain is. They're on the side of a regime that is a terrorist regime, of a religion, by the way, that once invaded and took over most of your country. It is absurd to me to see the Europeans caving on Islamic terror because they flooded their country with Islamic immigrants for cheap labor, and now they're too scared of them and do not wish to anger them, even though they're a minority in the country. Now, what good is NATO in that case? Now, that brings me, by the way, to a topic. And I know going into this topic, I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers. But we need to get into this. Shadi Hamid I've seen him online. He is a Post columnist and a senior fellow at Georgetown University's Center for Muslim Christian Understanding. He's written a number of books, including The Case for American Power. He is a progressive, and he's got this piece. Let me just read this in for you. There is a reflex that kicks in when someone questions whether you belong. You start assembling evidence. You cite your credentials and your patriotism. When Representative Andrew Ogles of Tennessee declared last month that Muslims don't belong in American society, I noticed this reflex in myself. I wanted to prove I belong for those who believe that I didn't. I suspect many Muslim Americans did the same. We have gotten good at this over the years, too good. Ogles is not along. The Sharia-Free American Caucus has swelled to 60 House members. Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama recently said, I'm ready to get rid of the Muslims. The instinct when faced with this is to marshal the evidence. Over the past decade, surveys have shown that American Muslims are patriotic, civically engaged, and more likely than the U.S. general public to say that political violence is never justified. You'd think that would be enough, except it shouldn't have to be, and this is where it gets uncomfortable for me at least. The assimilation defense, look how well we've integrated, is satisfying to make, but it concedes a premise I no longer accept, that a minority community's right to be in the United States depends on its willingness to converge with the cultural mainstream. It shouldn't depend on that. It shouldn't depend on anything. But there's something else going on that makes the picture messier. On the questions whether Muslim Americans remain religiously conservative, sexuality, gender identity, and family structure, their views don't diverge much from the Republican base. They haven't assimilated as much as liberals might like. You'd think Republicans would sense an electoral opportunity. According to Pew Research's Religious Landscape study, 55% of Muslim Americans say homosexuality should be discouraged by society. Republicans, those who lean Republican, are at 47%. On whether growing acceptance of transgender people has been a change for the worse, 48% of Muslims say yes. 63% of Muslims say children are better off when parents stay home to focus on family. This is where the conversation needs to shift, and where it becomes less about politics and more about cultures. Muslims are different in certain ways. How could they not be? Islam shapes how its adherents think about family, sexuality, and what it means to live a good life. Simply put, Islam is a more public religion than Christianity. Muslim prayer is visibly striking and often communal. If a Muslim doesn't drink alcohol or fast during Ramadan, there would be noticeable to others. Moreover, practicing Muslims can't disavow Sharia even if they wanted to. Sharia, or Islamic law, gives guidelines on how to pray, fast, and otherwise observe what it means to submit to God in daily practice. Essentially, he's making the case that Muslims should not have to assimilate into the United States. I'm often telling you guys that over the years, there are very few things I have changed my mind on. People oftentimes, because I didn't support Trump or I criticize Trump now, even though I have supported him in the last two elections, say, well, you're not conservative. I have people in my life who insist I'm somehow not a conservative, and it's all about support for or against the president, not particular ideas. You got half the people out there now who used to claim to be conservatives arguing what is conservatism conserved, and the other half saying, well, you're not a conservative, Erickson, because you don't support Trump. Trump himself doesn't call himself a conservative. He's a populist, and I'm not. My convictions really haven't changed. The situations we're in changed, but the principles direct how I view the situation. There are very few things on which I have changed. This is one of them. I think after 9/11, to show we were an open and tolerant society, the Bush administration and then the Obama administration overcorrected on the admission of Muslims into the United States. I think we've overcorrected. And I think we need to correct again. I think it's a problem. I have very much changed my mind on this issue. I think that the United States needs to overcorrect in the other direction on Islamic immigration into the United States. And this piece by this guy in the Washington Post, Shadi Hamid, is a cautionary tale in my mind about Islamic immigration into the United States. I do not believe that someone must abandon their religion when they come to the United States. And there are a large segment of Muslims who come to the United States who do not believe jihad means violence, or they reject the idea of jihad. They do not want to operate as sleeper cells in this country, waiting until their numbers are large enough to then impose their will. And unfortunately, I get the sense that they're the minority. You look at Dearborn, Michigan, which has been a hotbed of not just radicalization, but support for Islamic terror. You look at the Somali population in Minnesota, which ran a scheme stealing taxpayer dollars and funding terrorism abroad. And then you look at how the media in this country, like so much of the Western elite, are too scared to talk about it and scream racism so they don't have to talk about it. We have thoroughly overcompensated and overcorrected on Islamic immigration in the name of tolerance and showing we're not afraid of Islam and we love Muslims. It's time for us to be less open because we have allowed into this country a large segment of the Muslim population that actually does not want to assimilate and does not want to become American. And you hear even members of Congress who we have let in who are Muslims say oftentimes that they're opposed to fighting other Muslims. We find people in the military who have often said that if they were forced to fight against a Muslim, they would not fight against a Muslim, even though they are an American. These people are not assimilated into the United States, and they don't appreciate that when you become American, you become American. And that doesn't mean that you give up your religion. It doesn't mean that you give up your way of life, but it sure as hell means you've got to put America first. And we can disagree on how we put America first. But if you're not willing to come into this country and assimilate into this country and become essentially American, then I got a real problem, and I think we have made a real mistake. This guy ends it this way. America was not founded on the assumption that its citizens would eventually come to agree on foundational questions. It was founded on the more radical proposition that they wouldn't, that people who disagreed about God, religion, and the good life could share a country anyway. Not because they would converge over time, but because convergence was beside the point. The question isn't whether Muslims, Jews, or Latinos will change. They will. The question is whether America will let them do it on their own terms. No, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of the founding of this country. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor for this. And what we find from too much of the Muslim community is when they become dominant in communities in this country, country, including places like Dearborn, Michigan, your life and liberty and pursuit of happiness goes out the window for them. That's just the truth. And you may not like it. You may hate me saying it, but it is the truth. I'm not asking you to agree to specific social views, as this guy says, and says that's not pluralist. No, I'm asking you when you come to this country to not take part in riots and protests calling for death of the Jews. I'm asking you when you come to this country to not, after October 7th, cheer on the murderers of the Jews and make Jewish students live in fear on their campuses. I'm asking you when you come to this country to not decide to rename streets in your local community in favor of Hezbollah and Hamas terrorists, which has happened in this country. I'm asking you when you come to this country to not drive your car into a Jewish school to kill all the Jewish kids. I'm asking you when you come to this country to not show up at gay nightclubs and decide to gun down everyone. I'm asking you when you come to this country to not show up at the Boston Marathon and try to kill people. I'm asking you to come to this country and be American. And for those of you who are Islamic, it means not just renouncing the violence, but speaking up against the violence, including against the Jews and the people you don't like, because that's what we do in this country. I'm asking you to allow me to exercise my free speech rights to tell you I've changed my mind and not use the heckler's veto to try to shut me down, which you will do. I think we've overcorrected on Islamic immigration into this country. And I say that as someone who has a lot of Muslim friends who actually are people who do speak up and actually do stand with the Jews. And in fact, in my community, stood outside a Jewish temple when neo-Nazis showed up to vandalize it. I'm asking you, however, to recognize that coming with that is a sense of assimilation. You have the right to freely worship your religion, but if your religion is hell-bent on inspiring people in places in Virginia and places in Michigan and elsewhere to do violence and radicalize your young. And by the way, we've got the tapes of the imams in the local mosques who are American citizens who are preaching in their mosques about terrorism in the United States and radicalizing the youth. And not a single one of you stood up and announced it. Where's Shadi Hamid denouncing those mosques? No. It's Islamophobic that we've raised it. And that's the trick that they do. Is they scream about Islamophobia instead of directing the issue at the people causing the problem. I'm not causing the problem. I'm pointing out that given the problem, I've actually changed my mind on this issue and think we need to rethink immigration from Islamic countries unless they're willing to come here and show us truthfully they're assimilating to become American first. And that means that their kids can go to the mosque and they can pray 5 times a day and they can have Ramadan and they can do whatever they want as a Muslim, but they're going to renounce jihad and they're going to renounce hatred of the Jews and they're going to renounce the hatred of the West. This hour of the program is brought to you by Van Allen Golf. Perfect sponsor this week with the Masters on in the background. VanAllenGolf.com, ALLEN. You can text the word golf to 33777 and get a link to Van Allen Golf. Check them out on Instagram at Van Allen Golf. And also, you can follow my referral link and get a subscription to Golfers Journal. If you're into golf, Golfers Journal is where it's at. And if you text golf to 33777, you'll get that referral link. 877-973-7425 is the number if you want to be on the program. I got to tell you that the NFL is coming under investigation by the Trump administration. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the Trump administration is beginning an antitrust investigation into the NFL, and I'm glad. I am am deeply, deeply dissatisfied with the current state of sports programming in this country between blackout dates and streaming services. You can no longer just have a cable package in this country to watch football games now. You've got to subscribe to multiple streaming services, and it is pricing consumers out. And the NFL can say all it wants that it is the most consumer friendly with the most access to games in local markets, but there are a lot of fans in this country of particular teams that don't live in those local markets, and they have to pay all sorts of money to get streaming packages to watch the games that they used to be able to watch on television. It's driving up the cost for the consumers to do this. And for the NFL to say all this, the NFL has, 17, 18 weeks of games? I mean, hockey lasts for half the year now. So does baseball, for that matter. The Braves have done a remarkably consumer-friendly thing with their Braves Vision programming, where you can watch all the Braves games for a fee and not have to worry about it. But the NFL, it makes it impossible. You got to get a subscription to the NFL streaming service, plus to Amazon Prime. Now, the Netflix, it sounds like, and then your cable package as well. Or it's offensive to me how these networks and how these sports teams and leagues are nickel and diming consumers. Meanwhile, take the Masters. In all seriousness, take the Masters. It's $1.50, $2 for a pimento cheese sandwich. You're a patron. You're not a user. You're not a guest. You're not a consumer. You are a patron. You are treated fantastically. Everyone who shows up wants to be there. They don't have a phone, and you're not nickel and dimed except in the gift shop. The food is reasonably priced. The parking is free. The nickel and diming from the sports leagues has gotten too much. I'm glad Congress is looking into this. Speaking of nickels and dimes, you need to go to Swiss America and find out about how your nickels and dimes are being affected by global prices, by commodities, by the oil trading that's happening in the Middle East right now, by the BRIC nations. They keep you up to date and educated, and they give you the information you need to know to act before your friends do, and timing the market and making trades and being a self-fulfilled investor. And you could even talk to them about precious metal IRAs. You go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. You sign up for Swiss America today at SwissAmerica.com/Eric, and they will send you their free report, The Secret War on Cash. You just fill out the form at SwissAmerica.com/Eric. They will send you the information, and then you can click the News and Views tabs and stay up to date on all of the latest breaking information that affect markets, commodity prices. Talk to them about precious metals. You can even buy gold from them, which I have done. Great gold coins. SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Check out Swiss America today.